Mercy Watson to the rescue. Chapter 1. Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson have a pig named Mercy. Each night they sing Mercy to sleep. Bright, bright is the morning sun, sing Mr. and Mrs. Watson, but brighter still is our darling one. Dark, dark is the coming night, but oh, our Mercy shines so bright. This song makes Mercy feel warm inside, as if she has just eaten hot toast with a great deal of butter on it. Mercy likes hot toast with a great deal of butter on it. But when Mr. and Mrs. Watson kiss her good night and turn off the light, Mercy's room becomes dark, very dark, and Mercy does not feel warm and buttery toasty inside any more. She feels afraid. One night, after Mr. and Mrs. Watson sang their song about the sun, kissed Mercy good night, and turned off the light, Mercy decided something. She decided that she would be much happier if she wasn't sleeping alone, and so Mercy got out of her bed and went and got into bed with Mr. and Mrs. Watson. She snuggled up between them. Mercy felt warm inside, as if she had just eaten hot toast with a great deal of butter on it. Chapter 2. Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson and Mercy were all in bed together. They were all dreaming. Mr. Watson was dreaming of driving a very fast car. Vroom, said Mr. Watson in his sleep. Vroom, vroom. Mrs. Watson was dreaming of buttering hot toast for Mercy. She buttered one piece, and then another piece, and then another. Have some more, dear, Mrs. Watson said in her sleep. Eat up. Yum, yum. Mercy was dreaming about hot buttered toast, too. In Mercy's dream, hot buttered toast was piled high on her favorite blue plate, and Mrs. Watson was buttering still more. It was an excellent dream. Mr. Watson said, Vroom, vroom. Mrs. Watson said, Have some more, dear. Mercy snuffled and chewed in her sleep. Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson and Mercy were all so busy sleeping that they did not hear the bed creak. They were all so busy dreaming that they did not hear the floor moan. Chapter 3. Boom! A hole opened under the Watsons' bed. Crack! The Watsons' bed fell into the hole. Mr. Watson woke up. Mrs. Watson woke up. Mercy woke up too. What the? Said Mr. Watson. Oink! Said Mercy. It's an earthquake! Shouted Mrs. Watson. It's the end of the world! Nonsense! Said Mr. Watson, but he did not sound very sure. He sounded frightened. Mercy, however, was not frightened. Mercy was hungry. Oink! Said Mercy again. She moved to the end of the bed. Boom! Crack! The bed fell a little farther into the hole in the floor. Don't move! Shouted Mr. Watson. Whatever you do, don't move! Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson and Mercy held very still. Mrs. Watson started to cry. I know exactly what we must do, said Mr. Watson. We must call the fire department. They will rescue us. But you said we should not move, said Mrs. Watson. How can we call the fire department if we cannot move? Mercy recalled her lovely toast-filled dream. She wondered if there was any toast in the kitchen. While Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson were arguing, Mercy hopped off the bed. Boom! Crack! Look, said Mrs. Watson. Mercy has escaped. She is going to find help, said Mr. Watson. She is going to alert the fire department. Mercy left the bedroom at a gallop. She was in a hurry. She was on her way to the kitchen. She was looking for some toast. Chapter 4. In the kitchen, Mercy sniffed the table. She sniffed the kitchen counters. She sniffed the floor, but there was no toast. There was not even a crumb of toast. Mercy's stomach growled in disappointment. Boom! Crack! Help us! Mrs. Watson called. Mercy thought very hard. Where could she get a snack? And the answer came to her. Baby Lincoln always had sugar cookies. Baby Lincoln lived next door, and Baby Lincoln liked to share. Mercy took the kitchen doorknob in her mouth. She turned it. "Help!" Mrs. Watson called again. "Sugar cookies," thought Mercy. She stepped outside. Chapter 5. The Lincoln sisters live next door to the Watsons. Eugenia Lincoln is the older sister. She has many opinions. One of Eugenia's opinions is that pigs should not live in houses. Eugenia often says, "Listen closely to me, baby. Pigs are farm animals. They belong on farms. They do not belong in houses." "Yes, sister," says Baby. Baby Lincoln is their younger sister. She is the baby of the family. Baby agrees with everything Eugenia says. It is easier that way. But secretly, Baby has an opinion of her own. Baby's opinion is that Mercy is good company. At the Lincoln sisters' house, Mercy looked into Baby's window. She could see Baby sleeping. Mercy pressed her snout up against the window pane. "Oink, oink," said Mercy, but Baby did not hear her. "Snuffle, snuffle," said Mercy, but Baby did not wake up. Mercy tapped her hoof against the window. Baby sat up in bed. "Who's there?" she said. Baby saw Mercy's snout pressed up against the window. "A monster!" shouted Baby. "A monster at my window!" Mercy shook her head. "Sister!" shouted Baby. "Help! Help! A monster!" Eugenia woke up. She did not put in her teeth. She did not put on her glasses. Eugenia went straight to the phone and called the fire department. "There is a crisis of an uncertain nature at 52 Deckerwood Drive," said Eugenia Lincoln. "Come immediately." And then Eugenia put on her robe and rushed to Baby's room. In her own opinion, Eugenia Lincoln was very good in a crisis. Chapter 6. "What is going on in here?" asked Eugenia. "There's a monster outside," said Baby. She pointed out the window. "That is not a monster," said Eugenia. "That is the pig from next door." "Mercy?" said Baby. Eugenia shook her fist. "In my opinion," said Eugenia, "pigs belong on farms." "Yes, sister," said Baby. Eugenia tapped a knuckle against the window. "Get out of my yard!" she shouted at Mercy. "Oh, sister," said Baby, "don't yell at her. You'll hurt her feelings." "She doesn't have feelings," shouted Eugenia. "She's a pig." "Oh," said Baby, "I'm sure you're wrong, dear." "I am not wrong," Eugenia shouted. "I'm never wrong. I know a pig when I see one." Eugenia scowled. She pressed her nose against the window pane. Mercy stared at Eugenia. Eugenia stared at Mercy. "Pig!" shouted Eugenia. She turned and ran out of Baby's room. "Oh dear," said Baby Lincoln. "Oh my." Chapter 7. Eugenia ran toward Mercy. Mercy's heart beat faster. There was going to be a chase. Mercy loved a chase. She let Eugenia get very close to her. "Oink!" said Mercy, dashing away. "Get out of my yard!" shouted Eugenia. "Oink! Oink!" said Mercy. She ran in circles. She kicked up her heels. "No pigs allowed!" Eugenia shouted. "Oh, sister," said Baby, please be careful." A siren wailed. A fire truck pulled into the Lincoln sisters' driveway. Ned and Lorenzo got out of the truck. "Do you think that's the emergency?" Ned asked. "Could be," said Lorenzo. Ned and Lorenzo sighed. "You never know with this job," said Lorenzo. "You're right," said Ned. You never know." Chapter 8. "Ma'am," said Lorenzo to Baby, "did you call the fire department?" "Oh dear," said Baby, "I did not, but Eugenia may have called." "Who is Eugenia?" asked Ned. "My sister," said Baby. "Is that her?" asked Lorenzo, "the one chasing the pig?" "Yes," said Baby, "that's her." Baby and Ned and Lorenzo watched Eugenia chasing Mercy through the yard. Lorenzo cleared his throat. What was the emergency exactly? Asked Ned. I thought I saw a monster at my bedroom window, said Baby. But it was not a monster, it was Mercy. Mercy? Said Lorenzo. The pig, said Baby. The pig who lives next door. I see, said Ned. Eugenia does not care for Mercy, said Baby. In her opinion, pigs belong on farms. There's something to be said for that opinion, said Lorenzo. Ned nodded. Help! Shouted a faraway voice. Help! Help! Help us! Did you hear that? Asked Ned. Somebody is in trouble, said Lorenzo. Let's go. Chapter 9. Ned and Lorenzo ran toward the call for help. They went into the Watsons' house. Help! Ned and Lorenzo looked up. They saw a bed hanging out of the ceiling. They saw Mr. and Mrs. Watson holding on to the bed for dear life. We are saved! Cried Mrs. Watson. Of course we are saved, said Mr. Watson. Mercy has alerted the fire department. She is amazing, said Mrs. Watson. She is unbelievable. She is a porcine wonder, said Mr. Watson. Ned and Lorenzo ran upstairs. They picked up Mr. and Mrs. Watson. The Watsons' bed sighed loudly and crashed all the way through the floor. Boom! Mr. Watson looked at the hole where the bed used to be. I have always believed very firmly in the fire department, said Mr. Watson. As have I, said Mrs. Watson. As have I. From outside the Watsons' house came a squeal. Gotcha! Shouted Eugenia. Chapter 10. Ned and Lorenzo and Mr. and Mrs. Watson all went outside. Eugenia was sitting on the ground. Her arms were wrapped around Mercy's neck. Her cheek was resting on Mercy's back. Eugenia was breathing very loudly. This pig, she said, was on my property. We'd prefer that you did not call her a pig, said Mrs. Watson. We prefer that you call her a porcine wonder, said Mr. Watson. After all, she did save us. She's a hero. She's a pig, said Eugenia. She started to cry. There, there, sister, said Baby. She bent over and patted Eugenia on the back. Mercy yawned. She was very tired. I guess that's it, said Ned. Yep, said Lorenzo. Our work here is done. Wait, said Mrs. Watson. It's almost time for breakfast. Oink? Asked Mercy. That's right, breakfast, said Mrs. Watson. She kissed the top of Mercy's head. She looked up at the firemen. Do you boys like toast? Chapter 11. In the Watsons' house, around the Watsons' kitchen table, sat Eugenia, Lincoln, and Baby Lincoln, and Mr. Watson and Mrs. Watson, and Ned and Lorenzo, and Mercy, of course. She was at the head of the table in the seat of honor, and in front of her, on her favorite blue plate, was a very tall stack of hot buttered toast. A toast to Mercy, said Mr. Watson, holding up his glass of orange juice. A toast to our darling, our dear, said Mrs. Watson. A toast to Mercy, said Baby. In my opinion, said Eugenia, pigs should not be toasted. In my opinion, pigs do not belong at the kitchen table. To our hero, said Mr. Watson. Where would we be without Mercy? Yes, said Mrs. Watson. Who would have saved us? I can't imagine, said Ned. Me neither, said Lorenzo. They all clinked glasses. Mercy had another piece of toast. Chapter 12. Outside the Watsons' house, the sun was rising. First the sun was red, and then it was orange. It rose higher and higher. Inside the Watsons' house, Mercy was lying on the couch. She was getting ready to take a nap. Bright, bright is the morning sun, sang Mr. and Mrs. Watson together, but brighter still is our porcine wonder. Mercy smiled. She closed her eyes. She was asleep before Mr. and Mrs. Watson even finished the song. The end. Pete the cat and the missing cupcakes. Pete and Gus were as busy as could be. They were getting ready for the cupcake party. It started at 3. They were making cupcakes for everyone. Pete and Gus counted them just for fun. They had 10 when they were done. Oh no, hang on! Some of the cupcakes were gone. They were sure there had been 10. Pete said, maybe we need to count again. They counted the cupcakes lined up straight. Now there were only 8. It looked like someone had taken 2, but who? Pete and Gus did not know what to do. Just then they found a clue. Gus said, look what I have found, sprinkles on the ground. I bet it was Squirrel. She loves sprinkles. Squirrel said, it wasn't me. It couldn't be. I've been at the spelling bee. Uh-oh, more cupcakes are missing. Come and see. There's only 6 now. That was too weird. 2 more cupcakes had disappeared. Now there were only 6. Someone must be playing tricks. But who? Pete and Gus did not know what to do. Just then they found another clue. Pete said, I bet it was Alligator. He loves to eat. Alligator said, it wasn't me. It couldn't be. I've been learning my ABCs. Uh-oh, more cupcakes are missing. Come and see. Now there were only 4. Someone had taken 2 more. But who? Pete and Gus did not know what to do. Just then they found another clue. There's a ladder at the window. I bet it was Turtle, said Pete. I know Turtle loves sweets. Turtle said, it wasn't me. It couldn't be. I've been swimming in the sea. Uh-oh, more cupcakes are missing. Come and see. What on earth was going on? All the cupcakes were now gone. Pete and Gus did not know what to do. They started looking for another clue. They found Grumpy Toad with icing on his face. Pete and Gus have solved the case. I am so sorry, it was me. I could not stop with just one. I ate and ate till there were none. Everyone agreed Grumpy Toad would have to miss the fun. He could not come after what he had done. Pete said, but wait, Grumpy Toad made a mistake, this is true. Let's give him a second chance. That's what friends do. Pete told Grumpy Toad they would give him another chance. He was so excited, he did a happy dance. The night of the party was so much fun. Grumpy Toad brought more than enough cupcakes for everyone. The end. 5 flying penguins. 5 little penguins sitting on the ice. The first one said, today feels very nice. The second one said, snow is in the air. The third one said, but we don't care. The fourth one said, hey, look, here comes a seal. The fifth one said, he wants us for a meal. Pitter-patter went penguin feet as they dove right in. Splash! 5 flying penguins started to swim, swim, swim. Flip-flap went penguin wings as they flew through the sea. The first one said, come on and follow me. The second one said, we're moving very fast. The third one said, we've lost that seal at last. The fourth one said, it's time to get some air. The fifth one said, wait, look who's over there. Honk, barked the charging seal. He just wouldn't quit. That sneaky, silly seal said, penguins, tag, you're it. The end. A bedtime for Bear. Everything had to be just so for Bear's bedtime. His glass of water had to sit on the exact right spot on his bedstand. His favorite pillow must be nicely fluffed. His nightcap needed to be snug. Most of all, it had to be very quiet. Very, very quiet. One evening, Bear heard a tapping on his front door. When he opened the door, there stood a mouse, small and gray and bright-eyed. He clasped a tiny suitcase in his paw. "I am here to spend the night," exclaimed Mouse with a happy wiggle of his whiskers. "Surely we agreed on next Tuesday," protested Bear. "No," said Mouse, "you most definitely said tonight." "Oh," said Bear. Bear had never had an overnight guest before. Guests could quite possibly mess things up and make noise, and Bear needed quiet, absolute quiet, at bedtime. Even so, Bear and Mouse enjoyed an evening of checkers and warm cocoa, and soon it was time for bed. "Remember, I must have absolute quiet," reminded Bear. "Oh, indeed," said Mouse. Bear set out his glass of water, adjusted his nightcap, fluffed his favorite pillow, and climbed into bed. It was very, very quiet. He closed his eyes. Bristle, bristle, bristle. Bear heard a noise. It was Mouse, brushing his teeth. Ahem! Bear cleared his throat in a reminding sort of way. "Most sorry," said Mouse. Bear closed his eyes again. Hum, hum, pum, pum, hum, pum. Mouse hummed while he put on his nightshirt. Pum, pum. "Absolute quiet," muttered Bear most patiently. "Deepest apologies," said Mouse. Crack, squeak, rattle, went Mouse's bed as he hopped in. Bear jammed his pillow over his ears, gritted his teeth, and closed his eyes. He was just about to drift off when— "Good night, Bear," Mouse called softly. Bear tried to pretend he was asleep. "Good night," Mouse called a little louder. "My ears are highly sensitive," cried Bear. "Really? How interesting," Mouse said. "Can you hear this?" Mouse mumbled into his pillow. "Yes." "Amazing. How about this?" Mouse said from under his pillow. "Quiet!" Mouse slipped under his blankets, crawled to the bottom of his bed, and whispered, "Can you hear—" "Silence!" Bear roared. Mouse slid from his bed and went into the closet and said in the tiniest possible voice into the farthest, darkest, teeniest possible corner of the closet, "Surely you can't—" He kicked him out of the room. "Will this torment never cease?" wailed Bear. "Sorry, Bear. Good night, Bear," whispered Mouse, tiptoeing back into bed as quiet as well, you know. Bear fluffed his favorite pillow, adjusted his nightcap, and waited. But there was no more sound from Mouse. At last it was quiet. Very, very quiet. Bear heard a shuffling sound. "Mouse, is that you?" No answer. Bear heard a crick, crick, crick on the floorboards. "I know it's you." No answer. "You can't fool me," Bear growled, but he didn't sound very certain. Bear heard a low moaning noise. "Mouse?" Silence. Bear was sure something rustled on the floor. "Mouse!" he cried. "Wake up!" Mouse stumbled out of bed, small and gray and sleepy-eyed. "What is it?" But Bear couldn't see any rustly, moany sort of thing in his room. His room looked quite like it always looked. "Nothing," lied Bear, still clutching his blanket to his chin. "I must have been talking in my sleep." Bear chuckled, but it was rather quaverly. "Ah," said Mouse with a glance at Bear. "Could I peek under your bed?" said Mouse. "Sometimes I like to check for things, you know." "Well, if you insist," said Bear. "Nothing," said Mouse from under the bed. "You'll want to check behind the curtains, I suppose," Bear said. "All clear," declared Mouse a moment later. "You'd better check the closet," offered Bear. "Then you won't be the least bit nervous." Mouse came out of the closet, dusting his paws. "Not a thing. Thank you, Bear. Good night." "Wait," said Bear. "You'll want a bedtime story, I expect," said Bear, "for your nerves." "For my nerves?" said Mouse. "Oh, indeed, I'm quite shaken." Then, with an eager flick of his tail, he settled on Bear's favorite pillow. And Bear told him all about the adventures of the brave, strong bear and the very frightened little mouse. Soon Bear began to yawn. Mouse yawned too. "Good night, Bear," said Mouse. "Good night, Mouse," Bear mumbled. Then Bear began to snore loudly, but Mouse just smiled. And soon Mouse and Bear were fast asleep. Shh! The end. Benjamin the Bear. Benjamin ran down to the river's edge. This is where he loved to play. This was his spot. The river split here, and a small stream flowed to the side. This was where the water was shallow, and flowed over the rocks. In other places the river was wide, and flowed very fast. The water rushed down the mountainside, past the hummingbirds with their fluttering feathers, past the beavers building their dam, and past the reindeer coming to the water's edge to drink, to the waterfall that tumbled over the cliff, making big clouds of mist. But here, in the shallows, just above the waterfall, the river sparkled and flashed and rippled. This was Benjamin's whole world, his river, his spot. If the reindeer or the beavers came close, he would snarl at them. "Stay away!" he would growl. "These are my berries. This is my spot." If the salmon came close, or the hummingbird swooped nearby, he would swipe at them with a sharp claw. "Stay away!" he would growl. "It's not his river," said the salmon as they swam upstream. "We come this way every year. That bear needs to be taught a lesson." "No, it's not his river," said the beavers as they swam against the current, dragging branches towards their dam. The reindeer nodded. "He needs to be taught a lesson," they agreed. Then, one day, they got their wish. It was a sunny day, and Benjamin was splashing in the shallows, just as he always did. He was so busy snarling at the salmon and the beavers and the hummingbirds and the reindeer that he didn't notice danger coming his way. A heavy tree hit him from behind and sent him tumbling into the water. Benjamin went under, not once but twice. He hated getting his ears wet. He choked and snorted and tried to stand up. But the heavy tree didn't stop. It just kept rolling downstream. The tree rolled Benjamin under again. Now his fur was soaking wet. The tree dragged him under water. It kept him from reaching the safety of the bank. "Oops," said the reindeer. "The bear's in trouble. Serves him right." "Serves him right," agreed the beavers, and they went back to building their dam. But Benjamin was in danger, even if it did serve him right. He was being pushed downstream toward the rushing water and sharp rocks. He was headed toward the waterfall. The crashing, tumbling wall of water swept everything over its edge and onto the rocks below. But luckily, help was on the way. The beavers were not interested in the little wet bear, but they were interested in the tree. The tree would make a perfect wall for their dam if they could just move it toward the bank. So, with a lot of heaving and pushing and pulling, they steered it toward their dam, and Benjamin came with it. Benjamin lay shaking in the beaver's quiet pool. He was too tired to climb out of the water and up the steep bank. "Here," said the beavers, and they gathered around him. "Hold on tight, and we'll push you out." "Here," said the reindeer, "hold on tight, and I'll pull you out." "Here," said the hummingbirds, and they fanned their feathers in the warm air above him. "Sit still, and we'll dry you off." "Get on your feet," said the salmon, as they leaped upstream. "Follow us, and you'll soon be back home." Benjamin looked around. He felt ashamed of how he had treated everyone earlier. "Thank you all for helping me." "Well, you don't deserve it," said the reindeer and the beavers. The hummingbirds and the salmon agreed. "The next time we may not be so kind." Benjamin knew they were right. The river belonged to everyone. He decided it would be best to share it and not be selfish. The end. Good night, my love. Sweet dreams.